Hi everyone, my name is Jimmy. I'm an Android developer at WhatsApp, and today I'm going to be talking with you about testing your app beyond unit, integration, and end-to-end. Let's take a step back and imagine we're engineers at a sports car company. So it's the beginning of 2019, and we're tasked with designing and building a new car. After a few months of iteration, we have this prototype. We've tested all the parts. So the wheels work, the lights are functional, and the frame is solid. We tested they all work together. The buttons turn on the lights, the pedal drives the motors drive the wheel. We've tested it on the road. It's gone through thousands of kilometers of usage. It's been tested on different terrain. You get the point. It's great, it's tested, we ship it to the world. But it's nearing 2020, and we decide to start iterating on the next version of the car. Some of our ideas include making a more powerful motor, a more efficient motor, making the frame lighter. As we iterate on it, we get closer to our goals. Our previous tests tell us things are going well, they're all passing, and things are looking promising. But somewhere along the line, our car turns from looking like this to this. So where do we go wrong? We were so concerned about testing the functionality of our car that we forgot about the look and feel of it. We forgot about all the small details that make our car stand out from the pack. So back to our Android world. We get so concerned about making our app single DeX, or the smallest it can be. Sometimes we forget to test the qualitative side of things. How can we ensure that our app looks as good as it feels? One way we can do this is with Espresso. After all, it's one of the default ways of testing on Android. Let's say we have this profile view. It consists of a profile avatar, a placeholder for the name, and a method such as display name. Let's look at one way we can test that it's rendered correctly with Espresso. It might look something like this. So let's break this down. We create an activity that houses our view with an activity rule. Then we get the view, set up its state by calling setDisplayName on it. And then we call a bunch of view matchers on it to ensure our view gets rendered correctly. This works sort of, but it has a few drawbacks. The first being is that this test is very abstract. It's very hard to imagine what this view should look like, except for the fact that certain views should be displayed. The next being, the error messages you get from Espresso are a bit cryptic. Here we're fortunate that our view is relatively simple, so we know which view we're talking about in this error message. But this could be an issue as our views get more and more complicated. And lastly, this won't catch future changes. So let me elaborate on that. So we started out with our original profile view. Later down the line, we might add a phone number, or our profile avatar view, it might change its behavior to have this green border whenever the user is online. Ideally, whoever changed this would notify us of these changes or update the tests. But that's not always the case. That's not to say Espresso is a terrible testing framework. Espresso is great at automating testing of certain workflows and the functionality of our app. But it'd be great to have a workflow where you didn't have to write any asserts and the system could catch future changes. An alternative approach is with screenshot tests. So let me explain what that means on a high level. First, we would create screenshots of our view in its different states. Then we would store those images somewhere, say for example a database. Then afterwards, whenever any code changes, we would regenerate all those screenshots over again and compare them pixel by pixel with the ones stored. Should there be any difference, we will alert the developer of these changes either in the pull request or in a ticket in case they were not intentional. A couple of reasons why I like screenshot tests is because they're visual. So there's no more cryptic error messages, but rather a visual diff of the changes to the view. Imagine a test report that looks something like this, where you see how the view looked like before, how it looked like after, and the changes in red. Here you can quickly identify what changed and how your code affected it. Another reason is because it allows us to catch very subtle changes because we're doing comparisons pixel by pixel. These changes are so subtle that they can slip by QA or other stakeholders. Here, it's kind of hard to see what changed, but that's the point. What changed was the rounded corners on the avatar view. This may not seem like such a big deal, but it could hurt the polish of our app. Similarly, if we kept track of all the screenshots, this will allow us to keep a timeline of that view and know which commit and when these changes were made. There's many different ways of generating screenshots these days, but for today, we're going to look at one specifically open sourced by Facebook. It's conveniently named Screenshot Test for Android. So like any other library, we start off by adding a few lines to Gradle, one in the project file and one in the app module. Then afterwards, we can begin writing tests. They follow a similar pattern to how we wrote them in Espresso. First, we inflate the view. This can be done through XML or programmatically. The view can then be set up such that it's in the state you desire, hovered, disabled, etc. Then we set up the layout dimensions of the view. This is required. It allows us to ensure that the screenshot taken will be the exact same size regardless of the device it's taken on. And lastly, we call record. This will take your view, lay it out on a canvas, and generate you a bitmap. The end result looking something like this. And because we're doing the rendering manually, this allows us to generate the screenshots deterministically when rendering such views such as progress spinners. So we can run this test hundreds of times, and the screenshot will always look like this. So now that we know how to generate screenshots, we can simply let our CI do the diffing of the images and call back to our pull requests should anything change. But before we wrap this up, I'd like to recommend a few things we can do to increase the utility we get from these tests. One of the first being testing right to left. Most of us here use our devices in English or a language read left to right. But as your app's user base grows in more and more parts of the world, it's good to be mindful that not all those languages are left to right, and to make sure that they have a great user experience. With one quick line, you can set your view so it also renders in right to left and document how that looks. Similarly, as your users update their devices, they will come to expect dark mode more and more. So assuming your app supports this, it will be a great way to verify that each view is compatible and will not blind your users in the middle of the night. Similarly, there's another convenient one-liner you can add that will force dark mode in your app. Using screenshots, we can ensure our app looks great, but screenshots can be invaluable in other flows too. If we recall our original pain points with the cryptic error message we get from Espresso, screenshots would be a great way here to provide context as to how it failed. With Espresso, you can set a failure handler, which is called whenever a test fails. With a few modifications, you can make sure to capture a screenshot whenever a test fails and then bubble up that error back up again. Done this way, we have the following: an error message and a screenshot alongside with it. So now the developer can more easily identify where they went wrong. Screenshots can also be a great way to document how a feature works. Instead of taking screenshots just when tests fail, we can take them during a test case. Whenever you write an end-to-end test, you can add a call to take a screenshot after a major step. So then you have great material to pass along to your QA team when describing a feature. I've talked a lot about screenshot tests, how important it is, and the benefits of it. Taking screenshots isn't just for testing purposes, but we can use it to improve the developer workflow. I hope you all think about incorporating screenshots in one way or another in your flow, because it's one of the many tools we have to ensure that our app stays performant, reliable, but most importantly, beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Jimmy. Does anybody have any questions? Oh, yeah.
Hi, thank you for the talk. It was great. I'm wondering though, when you have a stable app that's like the UI is mostly complete, this sounds like a good idea. But you know, when you're in the middle of developing and things change, are moved around all the time, week to week, how easy it is to use maybe that library to automate it when you're doing changes on purpose, and every time you do a small change, move things a little bit, you have to recreate screenshots.
For sure. So with this, just thinking back to like the pyramid of tests where you have a lot of units, a couple of like integration, and very few like end-to-end. I think this falls along the line of like the end-to-end case where this would be super beneficial as your app matures and you're not making such drastic changes, so that you catch all these small polishes that like a designer has thought very carefully about, and it's not just going through redesign like every year or so.
Thank you.
So the way that the diffs are calculated is inside of the library, or how does it happen?
Yeah. In the library, there's also like a Gradle command to also do the diffs, but you can use any other open source library to generate these diff comparisons, and it's up to your own like CI to do the whole hooking to your pull request or generating a ticket for the author.
Hi. So what tool do you guys use at WhatsApp to actually manage the different versions of the screenshots? So we've tried before, but as was mentioned before, screenshots change. And as they changed, it was hard for us to even keep up with the different versions. And at some point, when we started, it was manual. Then we got more of them. So then without having some tool to help us out, we kind of slowly started to use less and less screenshots in our flow because of basically that hurdle of managing all the different screenshots.
Mm-hmm. At WhatsApp, we use a lot of like Facebook internal like infrastructure. One of the, I guess, public ones that might be well known is like Fabricator, which is similar to GitHub. There's a bunch of other internal tools. I'm not sure if I can really talk about how we like store these images, but it's pretty straightforward. Like on a very high level, it's still just a database. There'll be like timestamps of like when each of these are, and maybe like a hash of that commit.
Any other questions?
Hello. So you talk about pixel-to-pixel comparison for the screenshot. Is that the only way you make a decision that the screenshot has changed, or you think with a new evolution of AI where you can check the characteristics of the image, font size, color, not just of pixel-to-pixel, in terms of making a decision that something has been changed and we don't have any false alarms? What is your take on that?
Yeah, so I think pixel-to-pixel is the most simplistic way you can do diffing of the images. That's why I kind of left it out to do it on your own accord, because you might want to set like a threshold of how much difference you want to have before you actually alert the developer of like these changes. But just like as you were alluding to, there's different ways you can do this. Like if we just change the RGB like slightly, like maybe we don't want to do it because it's not perceptible, but like you would need some sort of other infrastructure, like ML infrastructure, to determine if that is perceivable. I think there was some over there.
Hi. One thing I wanted to add about the screenshot test is we use something similar, and you get a lot of benefit in pull request reviews as well, because you don't have to check out the code and look at it. You can just see the diff of what someone did.
Mhm.
And also when you're like doing your local development, you can just run the test, and you don't even have to install the app ever. So like my flow for doing things is just make a change, see the screenshot. It's really fast. And my question is, the library you're talking about, does it support taking screenshots of dialogues?
Dialogues. It should. The library supports activities and views, so I don't think it's too hard to imagine like spinning up an activity, then the dialogue to take that screenshot.
Okay, thanks.
Hi. I was actually wondering, like, as you were using this tool, have you ever found any pain points, like just as you're going through it and you're like, oh, I wish it could do this, or you've used a different tool that's worked a little bit better? Like, what were some of the pain points that you've had with this tool, if you don't mind me asking?
It's fairly simplistic. Like like I alluded to, there's other open source libraries. I think one like by Square that like generates screenshots by reverse engineering, like Android Studio. This one runs just off an emulator, so there is that like performance difference. The other ones, I guess, would be it kind of just takes a screenshot. There's no like plugin, like you have to actually add the code to do dark mode or right to left. It's not like built into a library. But I think that was a conscious decision by the author to just make it take a screenshot of the given view at that time and not try to make a Swiss Army of everything.
Okay. Thank you.
We have a few more minutes.
Hi, how would you test the screen with dynamic data? So, for example, like Facebook feed, would you break that apart and test it?
Yeah, so with the feed, like I don't work on that, so I can't comment too much on it. But with the feed, yeah, there's different ones with like the album, just regular text, image, video, that sort of thing. It would kind of fall under the whole state example I was given, which is you would have that view. They probably have like a regular, they probably have specialized views actually for each of those types. And then just fill it with some test data to render.
Anyone else? All right, well, give it up for Jimmy again.
Sweet.
Thank you, Jimmy.